At the end of the day, there are only two positions here. One tells children that they're beautiful just the way that they are, that they can find happiness in their own bodies. The other tells them that they should take drugs and cut themselves up with expensive and experimental procedures in order to find freedom from depression. I know which side I'm on. No child in Mississippi will have these drugs or surgeries pushed upon them. This stops today. We are taking a stand for all of our children. House Bill 1125 is now law. At this time, I'd like to invite someone up here to give some remarks who has covered this issue around the country. Matt Walsh is a writer for the Daily Wire who I think will be helpful as we discuss this legislation and its importance. Matt, would you please come up here and say a few words? And thank you for being in Mississippi.
Thank you. Great. Well, I want to thank the governor and the lawmakers here in Mississippi who have done the right and necessary thing by banning the horrific medical abuse of children. I'm extremely encouraged to not only see this law being passed, but to see the national movement that we have been able to build, pushing back against the gender ideology madness that has a stranglehold on our society and on our children for far too long. The reality is that this is not a difficult issue, as the governor's already covered. It's quite straightforward, in fact. If we lived in a sane society run by sane people, we would all be able to agree on this point. The question of whether it's ever okay to castrate and sterilize and mutilate a child would be answered in one loud and unified voice, saying without hesitation, not only no, but hell no. That is how all normal, common sense, decent Americans answer the question, and they don't have to think about it. But sadly, many of the people who hold power in this country and who run our institutions do not pass this basic test of human decency. These vultures have lined up to feast on and profit from the confusion of innocent kids. Confusion that these same vultures have intentionally fostered in the minds of our youth. They create the identity crisis, and then they monetize it. These kids are put on so-called puberty blockers to chemically castrate them, drugs that, by the way, have been given to sex offenders to chemically castrate them, and now we give them to kids. Off-brand cancer drugs that we're giving to children. They're given cross-sex hormones, which have irreversible and permanent effects. And before the age of 18, many kids will undergo surgeries, such as double mastectomies. Now, the kids cannot choose any of this. They cannot consent to it. They can't understand what they're doing or what the long-term effects or even short-term effects are going to be. You know, I often make the same point that the governor just made, and it's an important point, that many of the people who support and advocate for this butchery are not petitioning to lower the drinking age. You don't hear them calling for laws to make sure that kids have access to tobacco or firearms. They aren't marching in the street demanding that 13-year-olds should be able to get tattoos or open credit card accounts or take out mortgages. In all of these cases, they recognize that minors have neither the maturity nor the powers of discernment nor the psychological nor neurological formation required to make these sorts of choices. And yet these gender ideology advocates want us to believe that the child who can't be trusted with a can of beer or with a credit card should be trusted to permanently transition into a different gender. It's madness. It is incoherent. And all the more incoherent when you consider that nobody actually can transition into a different gender. That's not physically possible. It's not medically possible. The doctors are lying to confused people. So the very fact that a child desires to do such a thing in the first place is proof in itself that she isn't thinking clearly and doesn't understand what she's saying or what she claims to want, which is not unusual for children. That's why they're children. We simply cannot allow this evil to continue. We cannot tolerate it. We who are decent and rational people, we who love our children, we who recognize basic truths, And one of the most basic truths is that children who are confused about their identity need guidance and love and clarity. They don't need hormone injections and scalpels. They need and deserve to be protected from the child-abusing quacks and soulless goblins who wish to exploit their confusion for their own financial gain. That's why we need this law. Our kids cannot protect themselves. They cannot protect themselves. We need to do it. That's our job as adults. And everybody who's remained silent on this issue is culpable in what is happening to our kids. Many members of the media who have not demonstrated the slightest bit of skepticism, as the medical establishment has just told us over the years, that it's life-saving care to castrate a child. And you have members, the majority of the media, that just goes along with that, doesn't ask one skeptical question about it, all culpable in this. That's why we need to protect our kids. We can and we must. And now Mississippi has. And finally, I would only say to any other state that hasn't gotten on board with protecting kids that it's time to get on board. Okay, it's time to get on board. It's time to do the right thing. It's way past time. We have to act now. And I'll turn it back to the governor. Thank you.